You're watching a Highwire Media podcast.
Hello and welcome to the True Crime Never Sleeps show. As always, I'm your host, Larry Leese. In today's episode of Fatal Fandom, we dive into the murder of Dimebag Darrell. Darrell Lance Dimebag Abbott had that rare alchemy of technical ferocity and disarming charm. On stage, he looked like mischief made flesh, pink goatee gleaming, Dean ML slung low, palms fluttering harmonics into shrieks. Offstage, he was the guy buying the picture, remembering the stagehand's first name, handing a pic to a kid and insisting it make them lucky. With his brother drummer Vinnie Paul, he helped engineer the 90s groove metal whiplash that made Pantera a rite of passage. When Pantera fractured, the brothers did what survivors do, turned into the wind and built a new ship. Damage Plan was the next experiment in joy. The tour was modest. Clubs, ragged carpets, low ceilings, a place where the barrier between icon and admirer was exactly one step and a leap. December 8th, 2004, the Alrosa Villa in Columbus, Ohio, would be one of those nights that feel ordinary right up until they become history. What happened then has been told as a headline, police report, a list of names. Here, the story is told by lingering with the man who rushed the stage, tracing his path into delusion till the moment he believed the bullets could edit a life. Nathan Miles Gale was born in Marysville, a town built from two-lane roads and friendly nods, where routine can be a kind of shelter. As a kid, he could be gentle, even goofy, but there were seams he never learned to stitch. Friends say he tried to belong and couldn't quite calibrate the joke, the handshake, the timing of eye contact. He loved dogs. He liked the burn of distorted guitars and the serrated mercy of heavy metal choruses. He admired the paradox many fans adored in Pantera, how fury could feel like permission to be tender later. After high school, he drifted between jobs until the U.S. Marine Corps offered a clean line where his days could stack. The uniform steadied him for a while, then the scaffolding shook. Accounts differ on paperwork and reasons, but the arc is consistent. The voices sharpened and the distance between what Gale thought and what the world insisted upon widened into weather. Back home, he collected notebooks. In the margins, he drew arrows, annotated lyrics, rewrote meanings. The band he loved became a mirror, then a message, then, in the hardening logic of illness, an antagonist stealing the very thoughts he could not quiet. To watch a mind slide is to misunderstand the slope. It does not look like cinematic collapse. It looks like an appliance that still hums, though it no longer cools. Gale held small jobs, smiled at neighbors, and told a friend that the songs on the radio were about him. He showed up at shows, crossed the stage once before, scattering cables in panic, but nothing lasting happened. And in the quiet after, the story reassembled itself as an anecdote. He bought a Beretta 9mm. He said it was for protection. He told a coworker that some people were listening through the pills. He put the prescription bottle back in the drawer and shut it. Alrosa Villa was the kind of room where you could count ceiling tiles, catch sweat flicked from a headstock. The floor was sticky, the bar loud, the PA faithful enough. Damage Plan took the stage to the warm roar small rooms perfect. Not the anonymous thunder of arenas, but something like hospitality amplified. Dimebag smiled and leaned towards the lip of the stage, as if he could shake hands with the first row without ever stopping the riff. In the crowd were people collecting memories, birthdays, first dates, the last nice thing they'd do for themselves before a long week. Somewhere around there was Gale, heavier than photographs remember, cap low, jacket zipped. He moved with the blunt purpose of someone whose map has only one line. When the first song punched the room awake, he used the commotion as a curtain and stepped through. For a fraction of a second, the old ritual fooled the witnesses. A stage rush, a fan's clumsy love. Then the pistol showed, and the night turned into metal. The first shots were small explosions that rewrote the physics of the room. Dimebag folded as if a marionette string had been cut. The sound scattered. Jeff Mayhem Thompson, the kind of security man who hugged first and glared second, lunged and was hit. A club employee, Aaron Hulk, moved the way good people move when there is only instinct left, and he fell. Nathan Bray, a fan, climbed onto the stage to help and was killed for kindness. 2 others were wounded. A drum tech was seized as a shield. On stage, time became a seam that would not hold. Some nights, a door is just a door. That night, a rear entrance became narrative hinge. Officer James Niggemeyer, responding alone in the first wave, came through it. saw the hostage, measured the angle that would not hit the wrong man, took the shot that ended the others. The killer fell. The music did not return. A minute can last forever when it has too much to hold. Afterwards, the streetlights outside the club looked indecently ordinary. Police tape jittered in winter wind. People made phone calls they would later remember as impossible. He's gone. The city collected statements and shell casings. Reporters learned to pronounce Dimebag without smirking. The news cycle drafted its arc. Crime, biography, controversy, consequence. And the internet tied ribbons of speculation to every post. A grandmother somewhere who had never heard his name learned it that morning and shook her head at the photo of the pink beard. Guitarists who'd learned their first harmonic squeal from his videos paused tours and lit candles on flight cases. Eddie Van Halen sent a guitar for the casket. Zach Wild sat at a piano and grieved into a melody that would travel farther than his speaking voice ever could. At the funeral, thousands formed a congregation made of denim and leather. Tears and laughter braided in the same aisle. The program read like a mixtape, each eulogy a favorite song. The investigation confirmed what the room already knew. The shooter acted alone, had carried more ammunition than anyone wants to imagine, had not left a note that could dismiss the mystery by sounding decisive. The officer who ended the rampage was cleared, and people tried to call him a hero in a tone that did not demand he agree. He later carried the night like a brick in his chest. The job is sometimes to survive your own good decisions. What do we do with a mind like Gale's? The vocabulary available, paranoia, delusion, schizophrenia, can name a fog without mapping it. It is human to want an origin scene, a single shove that pitched his downfall, but the story is not neat. There is loneliness that turns like milk left out. There is the ache of nearly belonging. There is the private theology of a fan who confuses worship and possession until he believes the altar owes him back his offerings. In the literature on stalkers and celebrity-targeted violence, one pattern repeats. The parasocial beyond metastasizes when the fan cannot metabolize distance. Most people survive that gap by myth-making kindly. They invent a version of their hero that says hello in their heads and doesn't mind being invisible friends. A few, like Gale, feel dismissal when there was never a promise. When Pantera collapsed publicly and loudly, Gale did not hear a business dispute. He heard abandonment from gods whose songs were supposed to be letters to him. He said Pantera stole his lyrics. Perhaps the delusion began as metaphor. They took my voice and then hardened into a claim about property. Psychosis is a terrible literalist. It makes metaphors into maps and tells you the treasure is buried where the X already stands. In that logic, the solution is equally literal. Retrieve what was taken, punish the taker, restore balance with force. The gun pretends to be a grammar that can fix a sentence. Vinnie Paul's grief looked like motion. He kept playing because routine is a rope. Friends said he laughed loud at things that were funny and finally slept only when laughter gave out. The metal community carried him the way pallbearers do before the casket, each taking as much weight as they can and pretending it is nothing. There were tributes at festivals, riffs rewritten as memorials, toasts that started with jokes and ended with eyes shining at the floor. There was also quiet negotiations with memory, deciding how much to play the old songs, when to say the old name, how to keep a brother present without asking him to sing. Fans learned to mourn publicly. They brought Sharpies to write messages on venue walls, turned guitar picks into rosary beads, made YouTube shrines where shaky footage of Dimebag smiling between songs could become proof that joy had once been routine. Some went back to the Alrosa Villa, as if by revisiting the room they could edit the event. Places where terrible things happen often become classrooms. People whisper lessons they wish had become unnecessary. After the shooting, clubs tightened doors and counted heads twice. Artists learned to feel the room's temperature and trust that a prickle on the neck means pause the song, change the lights, ask the crew to sweep the wings again. Some of these precautions became muscle memory, some calcified into cynicism. A stage is supposed to be a threshold where strangers become a temporary nation. The new rituals, wands again, bag checks, threaten to turn the threshold into a checkpoint. But in exchange, there's a better chance that the encore is still an encore. Conversations about guns rose and fell along the same grooves as always. Rights and rules, anecdotes and statistics, what if and what then. Meanwhile, conversations about mental health acquired a different timbre. Not just sympathy for private suffering, but urgency and public risk when treatment becomes a maze. The hard lesson is that care cannot require perfect foresight. It must be designed for imperfect warning signs. The hard lesson is that care cannot require perfect foresight. It must be designed for imperfect warning signs. Gale gave off warnings. They were not legally actionable enough, and then they became sirens. The story of December 8th is not only loss, it is a parable whose meanings branch. One meaning is that art is not armor. Another is that devotion must never claim ownership. A third is that kindness is not naivety. Nathan Bray died because he believed help was still possible. The parable does not punish that instinct. It blesses it, even as it mourns him. There is also a professional parable for the first responder who crossed the threshold and fired a single shot. That moral action can be decisive and still damaging to the doer. We prefer hero tales tidy as uniforms, but most of them hide bandages. If we want officers who will act when seconds are decisive, we must fund the years after the seconds, the therapy that unknots the image that returns uninvited at 3 a.m. Every retelling risks freezing Dimebag on the floor of that stage, but he does not live there. He lives in the squeal that still teaches teenagers the physics of grins, in the friendship doctrine that says the backstage fridge is for everyone, in the discipline of a right hand that can still drill eighth notes until they feel like a joke told perfectly. He lives in the way other guitarists stand wider now. Stances learned from watching him plant joy like a flag. His legacy does not require exaggeration. It asks only that we remember the particular. The way he pointed with the neck of his guitar when he wanted the crowd louder. The way he tilted his head and laughed when something dumb was exactly dumb enough to be wonderful. The way he turned heaviness into hospitality. Not all giants are generous, but he was. There are two honest ways to speak Gale's name now. The first is institutional. His case study sits in binders that train clinicians and security teams to listen earlier. To interrupt a delusion's momentum with care and boundary at once. The second is personal. His mother, who loved him, wakes to a world where his son is both the boy who hugged her and the man who made other mothers weep forever. Our compassion must be sophisticated enough to hold both truths and to refuse the lazy verdict that one cancels the other. If we can do that, prevention becomes something other than paperwork. It becomes neighbors who know what to do after a strange conversation. Bands who train crews to treat erratic behavior as data, not drama. Systems that make it easier to get a person into an evaluation without waiting for a felony. The ambition is humble and enormous. Fewer memorials. On paper, the night ends with an autopsy and a funeral, but narratives refuse to obey paperwork. The night echoes whenever stage lights warm and the first chord tests the room. It echoes when a bouncer scans a face and decides to be kind, and also when he decides to be firm. It echoes when a young guitarist plays a flurry and then learns to leave space for a grin. It echoes when someone in the crowd hears a lyric and feels less alone. It does not mistake that feeling for a contract the singer must sign. What survives the shot is what preceded it, the stubborn human insistence on gathering for sound. The risk is real, so is the reward. The band arrives, the crowd invents a single throat. And for 90 minutes, the world is persuaded to be simpler and kinder than it was outside the door. The price of that miracle is vigilance and the work of systems that keep the miracle going. In telling this story with the camera on Nathan Gale, we refuse to let him be only a blur at the edge of the frame. We do not center him to praise him. We center him to learn the geometry of the harm he made, to measure the angles where intervention might have fit. To practice the discipline of understanding because sentimentality cannot save anyone. At the same time, we return the final moments to Dimebag, because the last word must belong to the work that makes life larger. He left rooms happier than he found them. He left riffs that still refuse to end. There's a line people say in Texas bars when the toast requires courage and laughter together. Dimebag Dimebag used it nightly. You can hear it even now, soft as feedback after the amps power down. A grin carried on air. Get your pull. He meant to have a drink, have a moment, have a life. Facing the stage where he fell, the phrase becomes a vote of confidence. Or continuance, excuse me. Take what is heavy, lift it with both hands, share the weight until it is music again. In the classroom, this murder invites 3 disciplines: method, memory, and mercy. Method means auditing sources, separating rumor from report, and pacing the timeline with patience. Memory means keeping victims human, biography before pathology, laughter before the autopsy, so the story does not collapse into a headline. Mercy, hardest of all, lives between accountability and annihilation. It holds 2 truths at once. A grievous wrong was chosen, and illness can be real without canceling responsibility. From these follow policies, low friction, psychiatric referrals, crisis lines, venue staff trained to treat anomalies as data, and post-incident care for responders who carry necessary violence home. If those systems seem costly, compare them to a funeral no one planned to attend. Prevention is thriftier than elegy. Scholarship cannot resurrect Dimebag or redeem Nathan Gale, but it can shrink the number of families drafted into grief. The promised study can keep its competence. Earlier calls, steady hands, safer rooms where music can remain, only music, truly. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Your thoughts on this case. Give us a thumbs up if you like our video. Hit that subscribe button down below. Hit the bell notification button to be notified of future videos. And if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TCNS. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening. We will see you next time.